Dateline, Tampa, Florida, January 2026. The United Soccer League today announced USL Premier as the official name of its Division I men's professional league. Soccer in the United States is entering a pivotal period, fueled by rising participation and the country's role as host of major global sporting events. This national spotlight is expected to deepen fan engagement, introduce new audiences to the sport, and drive demand for professional soccer in communities across the country.
And that is how the United Soccer League announced the official name of its new Division I Men's Pro League. It will include promotion and relegation and launch in 2028.
Some people mocked the English naming conventions of the new USL Pyramid. Premier at the top, then Championship, then League One, League Two. I mean, stealing from other countries is so typically U.S. soccer, right?
And people wondered how Pro Rel would work in the U.S., where team owners and fans are used to their investments, either financial or emotional, holding their value no matter how badly they perform.
Yeah, I mean, the New York Jets haven't made the playoffs in 14 years, and over that time, their value has grown from about $1 billion to $8 billion. Shout out to Jets owner Woody Johnson, an absolute moron whose ancestors made so much money in the asbestos-laced baby powder business that he can now thrive while his team goes 3-14.
Kirk has about 20 minutes on Woody Johnson. If anybody wants a bonus episode, just let us know.
Yeah, it's a golden age for fail sons. Plenty of material. Anyway, what that USL announcement made clear is that the last 30 years have cemented the idea of Major League Soccer as the American Pro Soccer League. And for a lot of people, anything challenging it represents some kind of outside influence.
But as veteran American soccer executive Peter Wilt puts it, MLS has become the star on the top of the U.S. soccer Christmas tree. But USL is the tree.
USL traces its roots to the 1980s. Its founder actually cast the deciding vote that made MLS possible. And from its indoor beginnings in roller rinks in the Southwest and Texas Panhandle, to its sprawling and sometimes chaotic network of small market teams, to its women's league, even to its current labor dispute with the Players Union, it contains many parts of the U.S. soccer story.
Which reminds us of a story our old coach, Bob Bradley, once shared with the legendary Manny Shellshite, and it became one of Manny's favorites.
Basically, this guy carves a beautiful wooden duck, and someone comes to him and says, "Wow, that's amazing. How did you make that?" And the guy says, "Well, I started with a block of wood, and then I got rid of everything that wasn't a duck."
They used it as a way of coaching good soccer. You carve away anything that's not soccer.
For our purposes today, USL is a big block of wood. So we spoke to a lot of people for this episode to help us figure out what the duck is supposed to look like. Because you might be driving right now and this needs to be easy to follow. Which reminds me, check your mirrors.
Here's the duck. USL is the most American soccer league, for better and worse.
And far from being a foreign-influenced rival to our MLS, it fits very clearly into a long history of pro leagues in the U.S. Again, for better and worse. So today, let's uncover the mysteries of the pyramid of the USL. Or carve a duck. It may take a few metaphors to get through this one.
This is an American game.
Way back in the first episode of Season 1, we talked a bit about early American soccer wars. It was 1911, 12, 13. It was a jumble of competing associations appearing, growing, and popping like bubbles in the cauldron of early U.S. soccer. We described it like this. We're going to have to be talking about the FA, the AFA, the AAFA, the NYSFA, the USFA, the USA SFA, FIFA, and honestly, I'm tapping out.
As we've said before, U.S. soccer history tends to repeat itself. So talking about the USL means hacking through the brush of the MISL, the USISL, the USOSL, the NASL, the APSL, the NPSL, the CISL.
And the A-League. Yeah, I took the easy one. And look, whenever you mix sport and money, there will be conflict. It's never quiet on the American soccer front, but we will try to make it as simple as possible. Check your mirrors.
Our story begins, as pretty much every U.S. soccer story begins, with an immigrant. This was Francisco Marcos from Portugal, who came to the United States in 1961, a few weeks before his 16th birthday. His family settled in New York's Greenwich Village, and he played soccer with his pals in Washington Square Park. He bought his first real pair of boots at Herman's Sporting Goods on 42nd Street. His high school team lost in the Public School Athletic League final in 1964. In 1965, Francisco went off to Hartwick College in upstate New York, where he played center back and edited the school newspaper. In 1968, Hartwick went on a 17-day, 14-game tour through 5 European countries. They crossed Checkpoint Charlie in Berlin, played against Ajax reserves in Amsterdam, and a scrawny kid named Johan.
After graduation, Francisco started what would become a long career as a soccer impresario and entrepreneur. He began by putting together a youth team for a tour of Europe, which turned into a tour company, which became the first full-time organizer of European tours for American high school, travel, and college soccer teams.
He also began scouting for college and pro teams. He brought a Persian kid from just outside London to Oneonta. It was Slough, actually, and he was no slow horse. He was Farouk Karashi, an elegant defender who went on to win the Herman Trophy for the best college player.
The bigger point to make here is that Francisco started making himself indispensable, acquiring all sorts of skills that would serve American soccer well. He even started a magazine, Soccer Monthly, in 1970, which he eventually sold to U.S. Soccer, who kept him on as editor.
He told us about what he calls fingertip skills, like design, editing, writing. He became a student of languages, too. He speaks at least 5, and history. He knew what was going on globally, so he could influence what was happening in the United States.
And what was happening was the North American Soccer League. In 1974, Marcos left New York for Tampa Bay to handle public relations for the Rowdies of the NASL. Over the next 11 years, Francisco Marcos worked in the NASL, moving to the Dallas Tornado and Calgary Boomers. But when the league collapsed, Marcos was at a crossroads. Could he stay in the game, or would he have to do something else to make a living, like, sell insurance? One of his good friends was Rowdy star and Brazilian indoor soccer legend Tattoo. Marcos became Tattoo's agent and sold him to the Dallas Sidekicks for $100,000 to play in what would be a new indoor league, a development league for the Major Indoor Soccer League, or MISL. This new league was called the Southwest Indoor Soccer League, SISL, or Sizzle. Francisco designed the logo.
Fingertip skills, right? Marcos and Tattoo went in together on converting a roller hockey rink into an indoor facility called Tattoo's Indoor Soccer Palace, and that's where Sizzle played. For the first season, in the winter of 86-87, there were 5 teams who paid $1,000 to have a franchise. 3 in Texas, 1 in Oklahoma, and 1 in New Mexico.
The following year, a 6th team joined Sizzle, Marcos's own Austin Socadillos. Again, Francisco designed the logo. Quote, "I wasn't reinventing the wheel," he told us. "I was capitalizing on the residue that was left over."
He meant the residue of the NASL. But as we've said before, there was really over a century of soccer residue across the United States.
And Francisco had a vision large enough for that. He wanted to unite the various regional leagues around the country into one entity.
And not just for indoor soccer. But a guy with a lot of experience and no money has to start somewhere.
Over the next 3 years, the league expanded out of the Southwest to New Orleans, Denver, Birmingham, Charleston, all the way up the East Coast.
Then, on July 4th, 1988, the '94 World Cup was awarded to the United States. And Marcos knew that outdoor soccer would be coming back. He swapped an O for an I, and Sizzle became SOSL, the Southwest Outdoor Soccer League, for the summer of '89, before switching back to Sizzle as the Southwest Independent Soccer League, covering both indoor and outdoor seasons.
If you got a league called Sizzle, you find a way to make the acronym work.
Exactly. But as it continued to expand, Francisco rebranded again as the United States Interregional Soccer League in 1991. By the '94 outdoor season, the USISL had 69 teams.
Nice.
Stop it. Grow up. The U-Sizzle was the largest league in U.S. soccer history. And then, after the 94 outdoor season, another rebrand. And the United Systems of Independent Soccer Leagues was born. Still U-Sizzle, and getting closer to USL. And in 1995, the USISL also launched a women's league called the W League. Jen Cooper, a leading historian of women's soccer, who's a stats manager and historian for the NWSL and produces an annual women's soccer almanac, thinks that timing is important.
Yeah, Marcos had only just gotten the men's league outside a few years before, so it speaks to the women's side as not being just an afterthought in the USL tree, but an integral part that needed to get up and running as soon as it was practically possible. Now, many of you will know that 1996 was a big year in the history of U.S. pro soccer leagues.
Absolute milestone.
That was the year that the A-League, which was the American Professional Soccer League, or APSL, which had been formed in 1990 as a merger between what was the third incarnation of the American Soccer League, or ASL, and the Western Soccer Alliance, was absorbed by yet another branch of the USISL, the USISL Select League, which competed at Division II as the A-League, while the USISL Professional League, which was Division III, rebranded as USISL D3 Pro, and the USISL Premier League became the Premier Development Soccer League, or PDSL. Please check your mirrors.
Probably not what anyone thinks of when they think of 96 in U.S. soccer history, because that was also the first season of Major League Soccer. Back when FIFA accepted the U.S. World Cup bid, one of the conditions was that the U.S. had to have a top-tier pro league. And some of you may be wondering why U.S. soccer powers didn't just take the USISL or the A-League, some existing structure, and invest in it, elevate it, make it the top American league.
And part of it was that you couldn't possibly sort through that last freaking thing I just said. But here's also where we start talking about something that will play a big part in the rest of this story: money. It costs money to run a soccer club, to operate a league, to host a tournament. And the higher the level, the more it costs.
FIFA worried about the people running U.S. soccer, that's capital S, in the late 80s. Would they be able to pull off a World Cup? Would it be big enough, profitable enough?
FIFA threatened to take the World Cup away if U.S. soccer didn't get new leadership, specifically Alan Rothenberg, who led an investment group to buy the LA Aztecs of the NASL in the late 70s, then served as commissioner of the very successful 1984 Olympic soccer tournament. FIFA wanted him to run U.S. soccer. He won the 1990 election, defeating Werner Fricker to become president of the U.S. Soccer Federation.
I saw Fricker days after the USA was awarded the 94 World Cup. The Maguire Cup, the under-19 national championship, was being hosted at his club, the United German-Hungarian Club outside Philly. He walked by and folks whispered, "That's the president of U.S. soccer."
And what were you doing at the U19 National Championship for the Maguire Cup, Tom?
I was in goal. The Union Lancers, back-to-back national champions, 1987 and 1988.
Keeping it in Jersey for 2 years straight, said the T-shirt.
Any questions?
Any questions? Any questions? Rothenberg pushed to take a big swing in 94, to host games in larger stadiums, go after bigger sponsor and TV deals, and within a few years, transform the federation from a small, mostly volunteer outfit to a professional organization with a $38 million annual budget.
Rothenberg wanted to take a big swing at a pro league, too. He didn't want to sift through Francisco's 200-team network of interconnected minor leagues. He wanted a clean slate, fewer variables, and deep pockets.
NFL pockets. See, while soccer people were trying to solve soccer problems, American football people had their own problem: how to make money on their expensive stadiums, which were empty most of the year. You get 8 regular season home games back then, maybe a playoff game or 2, unless you're the Jets, maybe a couple of concerts. They needed some off-season revenue, and they thought soccer might do the trick.
This was an echo of the American League of Professional Football, the ALPF. Back in 1894, baseball owners were looking to make some money in the off-season. And there was a brief soccer league, which included some baseball players in cleats trying to kick a ball. That's one of the reasons it was brief.
And then in 1945, Branch Rickey reached out to his old friend from St. Louis and our old friend from Season 1, Thomas Bullets Cahill, the now forgotten father of American soccer. Rickey wanted to set up a pro soccer league in major league ballparks and offered Ebbets Field. Phil Wrigley was interested in getting in on it, but when the owners of the soccer franchises heard about it, they all jacked up their fees and demanded to be cut in, which scared off the baseball people and blew up the deal.
In the early 90s, Rothenberg and NFL owners like Robert Kraft and Jack Kent Cooke saw a chance to create their dream league, a setup where billionaires weren't buying teams. They were buying shares in a league that would control costs, offer parity, limit expansion, and ensure stability. They called it single entity.
So romantic.
The business of sport, American style.
There's a fundamental division in soccer, in coaching and tactics, even in fandom, right? Between, call it art and science, heart and head, right? The romance of the beautiful game versus the pragmatism of stats and results. So if the USISL ecosystem in the early 90s leaned more towards the messy idealism of soccer, MLS was going to McKinsey and Company its way to sustainability. It was going to be located in NFL cities with massive populations, and it was going to be centrally controlled.
To Francisco Marcos, that was fine. Back when he was running the Sacadillos, he was studying U.S. sports, including the history of the NFL and the AFL, as well as the National and American leagues in baseball. For him, the U-Sizzle project was always a long play. He was trying to build a European-style pyramid in the United States that could coexist with some new leagues like MLS and then, with enough time and investment, compete against it or even merge with it.
But Marcos didn't have billionaires with football stadiums as U-Sizzle team owners. He had no problem with those guys investing in U.S. soccer, though, and that was lucky for Rothenberg, because in August of '94, less than a month after hosting the most successful World Cup in history, he was up for re-election at the U.S. Soccer Federation, and he was in danger of losing.
I mean, that's a shocker. But with Alan Rothenberg's grip on U.S. soccer and the future of MLS in the balance, let's take a quick break. Be right back with the election that changed the course of U.S. soccer history. If you like what you're hearing, click to follow An American Game so you won't miss out on future stories about U.S. soccer.
We've got some really good ones lined up to get you ready for the World Cup this summer.
It's U.S. soccer at the intersection of history
and Hollywood. Stuff most people don't know, but we think that you should.
And if you like it, we hope you'll share it.
You know how it works. Like it, subscribe to it, tell your friends, just give a click. It helps.
And before we head out there, Kirk, what's your favorite soccer acronym?
I'm going to have to go with TFC, which is not Toronto Football Club. It's TFC LA, Tudela Football Club, Los Angeles, the youth club that I helped start back in 2017 and is now one of the top girls soccer clubs in the country.
There you go.
Shout out Jacob Tudela and Chelsea Tudela, who are killing it.
It's August of 1994. We're in San Diego for the meeting of the National Council of U.S. Soccer. Chuck Blazer is presiding. Hundreds of people wear pins in support of current U.S. Soccer Federation President Alan Rothenberg. Shaped like sheriff badges, they say, "Keep Alan. He wins, we win."
Rothenberg's chief rival is Richard Groff, the Federation treasurer. Pointing to the fact that Rothenberg was simultaneously president of U.S. Soccer, chairman of the World Cup, and chairman of Major League Soccer, Groff said, quote, "He's choosing to run everything. He's not the only one who's done anything in the last 4 years, and what we're saying is, hey, spread the leadership responsibilities," unquote.
Rothenberg was publicly confident he would win in a landslide. Privately, he was calling in all his favors to tip the scale. FIFA President João Havelange gave a speech to the delegation the night before the election. He touted Rothenberg's accomplishments, mentioning his name 17 times. It was awkward, attendees said.
Also awkward? After the first round of voting, needing 51% to win, Rothenberg was only ahead by 2%, 49-47, with Federation Vice President Hank DeBordes getting the rest of the vote. 3 of the 4 existing pro leagues, 2 indoor leagues as well as the A-League, were wary of Rothenberg's MLS steamrolling the rest of pro soccer in the country. But the 4th league, with 6.5% of the vote, belonged to Francisco Marcos. If he had voted for Groff, MLS was dead.
Now, earlier that day, Havelange had summoned DeBordes to his hotel room, and the rumor was that DeBordes had been asked to withdraw. And after the first ballot, he did. A second ballot was called.
U.S. national team coach Bora Milutinovic, whose Rothenberg badge was pinned to his chest upside down, maybe from nerves, said, "Somebody told me the penalty kicks were bad. This is worse."
You're not going to do your Bora imitation?
I got to work on the Bora imitation.
All right. After a second round, Rothenberg got the DeBordes vote and pulled over 53%. Allen was still in charge of U.S. soccer, but the big winner, according to a USA Today reporter, was, quote, his proposed Major League Soccer, scheduled to start play in April, end quote.
As Sunil Gulati said in 2007, when Marcos won the Werner Fricker Builder Award, which is U.S. soccer's most prestigious individual honor, quote, "If it weren't for decisions he made with respect to Major League Soccer when it was starting out in the mid-90s, the league would not exist today. I don't mean wouldn't exist with 29 teams. Would not exist. Full stop." Unquote.
Wow, real courage to take on Sunil there. I love it. I love it.
Why did Marcos vote in MLS's interests? He told us this recently, quote, "I believe that Alan Rothenberg and his group could take us to the promised land," unquote. The A-League just wasn't going to be the shiny star on top of the tree.
2 years later, Marcos was folding the A-League into his USizzle portfolio. And a few years after that, in 1999, he went looking for his own deep pockets to help stabilize what was now called United Soccer League, USL. It took a while, but we finally got there.
Hooray! Okay, enter Umbro, the iconic British soccer brand. Based just outside Manchester, it started in a pub in 1924 as Humphreys Brothers Limited. Umbro, I learned while researching this, is short for Humphreys Brothers. There you go, the more you know. Umbro bought a 60% stake in USL, which included youth leagues around the U.S. That was the real big play for them, right? Tapping into the American youth soccer market.
It's still a play. Look at the inroads made recently by a company like Capelli. Quick tangent. A listener recently asked about a reading list. If apparel is your thing, check out Sneaker Wars by Barbara Smith. Excellent book about the Adidas-Puma rivalry. Nike comes in at the end to upset the German family feud, and there'll be a character here in a bit.
2 other characters behind the scenes here are John Leonard and Kartik Krishnaiyer, whose writing on the USL was part of our research.
Love it, Kirk. Showing love for primary sources. I mean, you're doing it all in season 2. You're not just a Hollywood insider who can do accents.
Anyway, by 2006, Umbro owned 94% of USL, which it ran as a soccer-first organization. The clubs were allowed/empowered to make their own sporting decisions, with the league backstopped by Umbro money. It was, again, more on the art than science side of the spectrum.
And there still was a lot of instability. Here are some notes from a summary of the 2000 A-League season by Dave Litterer, whose digital archive on U.S. soccer history is a treasure trove of information. All right, this is going to be a mouthful. Quote, before the season, Orange County became the Waves. Montreal rejoined the league. San Francisco became the Bay Area Seals. After the season, U.S. Project 40 left the league. Remember Project 40? Boston was relegated to the D3 Pro League. Bay Area and Orange County were relegated to the D3 Pro League, but folded before the season began. Raleigh folded. Hampton Roads went on hiatus.
You get the idea. Again, please check your mirrors.
And the same thing was happening on the women's side. In 1995, the USW League was formed as the first National Women's Soccer League. Within a few years, the Western Division broke away to become the Women's Premier Soccer League, or the WPSL, and women's soccer had their own alphabet soup.
The USLW would bounce back and forth between pro and semi-pro until it folded in 2015. Although, As we'll see, that wasn't the end of USLW.
In 2007, Umbro was bought by Nike. And after sifting through all the designs, warehouses, historic kits they now owned, Nike also realized that they owned 94% of the USL.
And they had a few notes.
Yeah, they wanted the USL to up its game, become more of a premium brand like Nike. So they pressured owners to play in soccer-specific stadiums and invest more in their on-field product, which was easy for Nike to say, harder for owners to do.
Yeah, I mean, you're trying to run your club in Rochester or Richmond or El Paso. You're seeing teams around you fold every year, and a multi-billion-dollar company is telling you to spend more money to make them look good. After a couple of tense years, Nike put USL up for sale, and a group of owners came together to make a bid. But in 2009, the league was sold to New Rock Soccer Holdings, an Atlanta-based private equity group led by Alec Papadakis and Rob Hoskins, which kicked off another small U.S. soccer war.
You know how much Kirk loves PE. This is going to get interesting. But you know how I find it hard to follow all this corporate stuff. A quick timeline cleanse. Like Francisco Marcus, Alec Papadakis was an immigrant. Born in Greece, his family moved to Canada, and then like Marcos, he came to the States to study and play soccer at Hartwick College. They even played together for a year and were buddies.
Yeah, I think that is something to keep in mind as we pivot from Marcos's USL to the Papadakis era, which we are still in. It's not a simple shift from naive dreamer to steely finance guy. Marcos was an idealist, sure.
Yeah, he told us his goal was, quote, to make soccer grow up and be somebody in the United States.
But he was also an entrepreneur who understood the bottom line. And Papadakis, who represents the American late capitalism vampire of private equity, was a player, a good one, which will color a bit of the story we're going to get into. For now, we'll pop back to 2009, when a few of the most influential USL owners were wary of New Rock Soccer Holdings. They didn't want another Nike situation where they were paying fees to the league but had no say in its governance. So they announced they were breaking away to a reboot of the iconic NASL.
Which was another soccer war. Both leagues applied for U.S. soccer sanctioning as second division, but neither had enough teams for the 2010 season.
Ultimately, they were both given Division II sanctioning, and NASL competed against USL and under MLS for the next few years.
And unlike the single-entity MLS or New Rock-serviced USL, the NASL represented a decentralized, member-controlled model. And some of those members, like the rebooted version of our childhood team, the Cosmos, were ambitious.
Under pressure, Alec Papadakis made a deal with MLS to allow MLS 2 teams to play in USL, which helped USL survive as the NASL sank under the weight of, well, being decentralized and member-controlled. Teams had different standards. Some, like the Cosmos, spent way more than others. And then, in 2017, U.S. Soccer refused to renew the NASL's Division II status, and the league collapsed.
Which led to a $500 million lawsuit by the NASL, accusing U.S. Soccer and MLS of colluding to control pro soccer. Rocco Commisso was involved. May he rest in peace. The case was dismissed in 2025, and that whole NASL, USL, MLS, U.S. Soccer war could be its own episode. My friend and Cosmo historian, Dr. David Kilpatrick, could make it its own season.
For the purpose of our USL duck carving, which is, believe it or not, what we're trying to do.
We're whittling away here. Trust us.
Kartik Krishnaiyer believes that the NASL pressure forced USL to adapt a bit and become more owner responsive. But yes, the net result was a clear field for the USL Christmas tree to grow under the shiny ornament of MLS and, on the women's side, the NWSL.
And USL did grow, sometimes too well, like when FC Cincinnati joined the league in 2016 and a year later had a magical run through the U.S. Open Cup, taking down the Columbus Crew, Chicago Fire, before getting knocked out in the semifinals by Red Bulls. In 2019, they joined MLS as an expansion team, and our son was drafted as one of the first players.
Not Tom's and my son.
No, I always say our son because, I didn't have, I only didn't have
I'll
to
take
work,
it.
or less than have to work. Right. Yes, my son.
Tommy McCabe now plays for Oakland Roots and is also a team rep for the USL Players Association. So Tom has a very personal interest in the players who, as we record this, have authorized a strike in their effort to get a better contract from the USL.
I talk to Tommy a lot, but he keeps confidential stuff confidential. So I have no inside info that I can or would share, but I'll quote him from a recent interview. He was talking about the Roots, and he said their facilities are among the best he's experienced as a pro. Quote, can't believe I'm quoting my son here. Quote, but there's always the possibility that someone here in this locker room could end up at a different place. That's just the nature of pro sports. When it comes to league standards, it's about improving the lowest common denominator. End quote.
And as a member of the Writers Guild, I've gone on strike twice for the same reason. I mean, the New Rock private equity leadership has brought relative stability to USL, but I have seen what private equity mentality has done to Hollywood. Studios and agencies have been bought out, and creative people, the ones who actually make the stuff that the studios and agencies are selling, have been reduced to replaceable line items, gig workers.
That's how most USL players feel. And part of the players' frustration is aimed at their clubs. They want those minimum standards raised. But the club owners are saying, hey, that all comes out of our pocket. Plus, we're paying fees to the league, but USL has no revenue sharing. So the players and owners are aligned there. They think the rising tide of USL should lift all stakeholders, not just the league office.
Back when streaming TV started, the WGA went to Netflix and all the studios and said, hey, if you're using reruns of our stuff to fill your new channels, you should pay us for them. Like you've done on regular TV for decades. It's called residuals. And the studio said, we don't really know how big this streaming stuff is going to be. It's not really making us any money right now. Let's commission some studies and just kick it 3 years down the road to the next contract negotiation. And they kept doing that, and they never did sit down to negotiate until we went on strike.
So much for a rising tide. Currently, USL players don't all have guaranteed health insurance.
They don't even have a guarantee that their club will have a gym to work out in.
Bet you thought that was a given at a Tier 1 soccer club, right? I know I did. And get this, the minimum salary for USL championship players last year was only $2,600 a month, and only for the 10-month season, not even a full year.
USL has offered to raise that minimum and provide health insurance for their new Premier League, but only if the contracts are quote-unquote flexible, meaning they can be terminated by the club at any time for no cause. So you relocate your family to another part of the country, and then your club overspends on its July 4th fireworks show, and they decide to dump you mid-season for someone cheaper.
That sounds bad.
It sounds like good old American vulture capitalism.
Doesn't help when the deputy CEO of USL said, quote, right now, players are viewed as expenses. Soon they'll be viewed as assets, end quote. And he meant that in a good way. That deputy CEO is Justin Papadakis, whose title was also Chief Real Estate Officer of USL, which also says something about the financial situation, the ambition of the league. Justin is Alex's son, and like his father, he played college soccer as a goalkeeper at Duke. So again, a member of the GKU who should know better.
Here's another Hollywood story. Les Moonves was the CEO of CBS, one of the most powerful guys in Hollywood until he was ousted in 2018 after multiple sexual misconduct accusations. Now, he had started out as an actor, and he was famous, infamous, for treating actors like garbage. It was like a chunk of Les's career was devoted to punishing actors who reminded him of himself or might make it farther than he did.
Let's give the Papadakis the benefit of the doubt that that's not where they're coming from. And we're not starry-eyed soccer dreamers. We know it takes money to run a club, run a league. So let's step back from the current labor dispute and carve another part of that duck, the for better part of USL.
Yeah, here's the headline that we started writing this episode with when we were thinking of it in terms of being the most American league in a good way. USL was founded and developed by immigrants who loved the country and loved the game.
And USL is not a billionaires league. The barrier for entry is still high, millionaires, but it's more accessible, more possible for passionate soccer people to put a club together.
It reaches parts of the country that MLS can't, won't touch. USL has a presence in over 200 communities around the country.
The quality of soccer at its highest levels is very high, and it has a youth to pro pathway for both men and women.
The presence of the W League from early on does speak to the inclusiveness of USL, where the women's game was never a priority for MLS.
In the lower tiers, it's a throwback to the earliest clubs in the U.S., where locals would play for their local team.
Yeah, I mean, look, my daughter has played for semi-pro USLW teams in her college off seasons. As a former CEO of Liverpool FC told us, USL is a proper football league.
That's Peter Moore, a founding owner of Santa Barbara Sky, a new USL club being put together for 2027. We spoke with Peter and some other people who are literally and figuratively invested in the future of USL.
Like our friend Chris Martinovic, whose Croatian immigrant dad instilled a love of the game in him. Chris played for Manny Shellshite at Seton Hall, and then he and his family moved to Northwest Arkansas, the fast-growing NWA, where he built a successful business career. And then, in 2019, Chris thought, what if we could start a USL team here?
He partnered with veteran sports executive Warren Smith, who started out as a baseball fan. In 2000, he led the effort to bring a AAA team to Sacramento. And after his success with what became the River Cats, he was asked to help out with the sale of a minor league team in Portland, which was connected to a little USL club called the Timbers. Smith became a soccer guy and was a founder and president of the Sacramento Republic, which was USL champion in 2014 and Western Conference champion in 2016.
Sacramento was lined up to get an MLS expansion slot when Smith sold the club and started San Diego Loyal. But the New Republic owners failed to close their MLS deal, and MLS came to San Diego instead, which spelled the end for the Loyal. So Smith has seen all sides of the USL-MLS relationship. And when he and Chris talk about the club they're starting, Ozark United, you hear the decades of U.S. soccer and business experience.
They agree that you have to be more than a sports team to survive. If your market allows it, you have to be a real estate development firm, a community master planner. You have to give people a reason to come to your stadium, to come together for your team. And while both can talk numbers, and they have to, they're building a stadium that needs to be paid for, along with the reported $20 million franchise fee that USL now commands. They both insist that the key is to create something authentic. As Smith put it, something local that sticks.
Smith remembers a letter he got from a 16-year-old fan back when he ran the River Cats. The kid's parents had been away for a chunk of the season, and the kid invited his grandfather, who he didn't see much of, to share their season tickets. And the kid told Smith that he and his grandfather had built a relationship over 10 home games together. That is what motivates him, he said.
And the same goes for Peter Moore, the son of a Liverpool dock worker and a nurse. Moore first walked through the gate at Anfield in 1959 when he was 4 years old.
He was, shall we say, killing it as the COO of Electronic Arts in 2017 when his boyhood club called and asked if he would trade sunny Southern California for the northwest of England to be their CEO. He couldn't say no.
During a 3-year stint, Liverpool won the Champions League, the FIFA Club World Cup, the Premier League. Not a bad shift for the son of a dock worker.
His other boyhood club was Wrexham, so when he came back to Santa Barbara and was approached to take charge of a stalled USL expansion effort, he had a model for what a smaller-scale community club could feel like. Moore's Santa Barbara Sky will play at UC Santa Barbara's stadium, so while they're not doing real estate development, they are all in on community development. They've spent the last couple of years engaging with the deep soccer roots in Santa Barbara, a task made more difficult by the regular threat of ICE raids every time they try to put an event together.
As he said, he wants kids decades from now who he'll never meet to have had the same feeling of walking into a stadium and falling in love with a game that he had back in 1959. So USL is still a place for soccer idealists, even the ones who know the way around a spreadsheet. Undefeated USL 2 2025 champs Vermont Green are built on good soccer along with social engagement and progressive values. St. Pauli and Burlington,
Vermont Green and Rhode Island FC represent USL in the Green Sports Alliance, which is the largest driver of environmental and social responsibility across global sports. And by the way, I've been to a Rhode Island game in Pawtucket. It is a great stadium, an amazing vibe, and it is very cool to see the game reconnected to some of its earliest American roots in that part of the country.
Meanwhile, on the women's side, USLW was the top flight of women's soccer in the U.S. for most of the period between 1995 and 2015. The Women's United Soccer Association, WUSA, was the world's first women's soccer league in which all players were paid as professionals, but it only lasted for 3 years, from 2000 to 2003.
And then women's professional soccer, the WPS, was around from 2009 to 2012. People just were not investing in women's sports even a decade or two ago the way they are now. So it was semi-pro USLW that mostly kept the lights on for women's soccer.
And though far from ideal, it provided a platform for the development of a lot of the women's soccer leadership today. Back in 2000, the top stats leader in the league, thanks to Jen Cooper, were Margaret Tijan and Angela Huckles, who are now the head coach at UConn and the GM of the Houston Dash.
In 2005, Amanda Vandervoort was preparing for her third season as head coach of NYU's women's team. The former Wyoming standout was also a goalkeeper coach for the New York Magic of the W League. Now, in 2021, she was named president of the USL Super League, which would be, when it kicked off in 2024, the new top tier of the USL Women's Pyramid.
As of 2025, it's called the Gainbridge Super League, and with its D1 status alongside NWSL, it's providing more pro opportunities for talented U.S. college players.
I mean, would it be nice if Gainbridge wasn't, quote, an InsurTech subsidiary of Group 1001 that empowers consumers to take control of their financial future with solutions that are accessible to everyone, no matter their budget or financial knowledge? Yeah, but again, we get that all this takes money.
All of the owners we spoke with reminded us that it takes constant cash to be competitive.
And even when you do it right, when you develop good players and compete well, you can go under, as we just saw with USL League One founding member Tormenta FC.
Yeah, the South Georgia club was the 2022 League One champion, and it announced it would not be able to play the 2026 season just a few weeks ago. And maybe management had something to do with only drawing 777 fans per game, but in the world of smaller community-based teams without massive media revenue and sponsorship deals, the margins have always been slim.
So, while we don't blindly welcome our private equity overlords, we appreciate that USL today embodies the tension between art and science, romance and the bottom line, a tension that is, at its very heart, very American.
For better and worse.
Though U.S. Soccer clearly thinks better, in February of 2026, it gave Alec Papadakis the Werner Fricker Builder Award, a nice bit of symmetry with his USL predecessor, Francisco Marcos.
Now, Francisco told us that he always saw a future where USL might merge with MLS, like the AFL and NFL, but some people we spoke to think that's impossible. The leagues are just structurally incompatible. It's single entity versus franchise model, and neither will want to change its DNA that much.
But if the USL and its owners can find the money to stay healthy while lifting up the players and not alienating the fans, who knows? USL may come out on top in the next inevitable U.S. soccer war.
And that's our story. Or duck.
Which was a little bigger than we thought it was going to be.
It's not the most detailed you'll ever see, but we think it looks recognizably USL. See you next time on An American Game.
Check your mirrors. This episode of An American Game is a production of Soccertown Media and was written by me, Kirk Rudell,
and me, Tom McCabe.
If you want to hear more of my thoughts on soccer, Hollywood, or whatever I happen to be annoyed by, Woody Johnson, you can find me on Blue Sky.
Kirk will have me in the archives digging up a new story and on the Soccertown Media page.
An American Game is a team effort. Our consulting producers are Matthew Nelson
and Larry Garrity.
Our theme music was composed by our old friend and former teammate, the multi-talented Patrick White.
And special thanks to all the folks we spoke to for this episode, and I hope I'm not missing anybody, but especially Jen Cooper, David Kilpatrick, Francisco Marcos, Chris Martinovich, Peter Moore, Warren Smith, and Peter Wilt.
And many thanks to the research efforts of John Leonard and Kartik Krishnaiyer.
And thanks to you for listening.
Yeah, that makes you part of the team. Come on, let's bring it in. If you like what you heard, subscribe, rate, review, tell your friends.
We'll see you next time.